Today on Shop Nation, I show you my process for making detailed full-color woodworking plans that I sell. I'll let you in on some secrets and show you how much money you can actually make doing that. What's up you guys and welcome, I'm Travis, this is Shop Nation. I get a lot of questions about my woodworking plans, specifically how I make them, what programs I use to make them, so in this video I want to share how exactly I do it and how to sell them if you want to go do it yourself. I know when I've been searching around the internet looking for how to make woodworking plans or tips and tricks, there's really not much out there. So I hope this video kind of fills that need, and if you have any questions, hopefully I answer them here. Now if it's your first time viewing one of my videos and you're new to my channel, we basically focus on a concept called shop greatness, which means that I tend to build and highlight projects that make your shop or workshop better and more efficient. And part of that is making woodworking plans so that you can do it yourself. Now making woodworking plans and selling them is not exactly a novel concept. If you watch other making channels like mine, almost all of us do it. So why would you want to listen to me about making woodworking plans? It sounds pretty simple. Well, to establish credibility and not to brag or gloat, I promise, I have literally made tens of thousands of dollars selling woodworking plans on Etsy. And I don't have hundreds of plans available. I have, I think 11 or 12. I think there's some value I can share with others on how to make woodworking plans or maybe how to improve your current woodworking plans so that you can sell them. Now, even if you're not gonna go sell woodworking plans, I think there's value in how I've figured out how to do this. So hopefully there's something in this video that you can take away. Now in this video, to keep it simple, I'm gonna make a single drawer box from beginning all the way through to the build plans. So obviously this is a short example, but the concepts are all the same. All right, so let's get down to business. How do I make woodworking plans? Well, as I'm planning any project, I always start with a pencil and a sheet of paper. So for me, there's just something about sketching with a pencil that kind of lets me wrap my head around exactly what I want to do. I kind of work outside in, so I look at the major dimensions. Maybe this thing has to fit within a space, or in the case of a drawer, has to fit within an opening in a cabinet, and then I work backwards from there. Okay, so I think about the joinery, I think about the materials, and from there I usually have a pretty clear idea of how exactly I want to do this. So once I have that sketch, I then sit down at the computer and actually start 3D modeling. Now this is the step that scares a lot of people. Whoa, 3D modeling, I mean, I get it, it's intimidating. Two of the most common platforms for woodworking are SketchUp and Fusion 360. SketchUp is okay, but if you had to start from scratch, I would urge you to go towards Fusion 360. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, it's a heck of a lot more powerful. So you can get away with doing very simple things on SketchUp, and for most people that might be okay. But if you ever want to progress past simple woodworking projects, or you want to divert into other technologies, Fusion is that direct insertion point. SketchUp kind of hits a brick wall. And number two is Fusion 360 is backed by Autodesk, a major CAD software company, and they're constantly putting out updates and improving the software. SketchUp, I really don't know, to be honest, their background, but it's not Autodesk. So the natural first question I get is, okay, I'd love to use Fusion 360. How do I get started? I always point people towards the Fusion 360 course by Kevin Kennedy. Now this is a paid course, it's not free, but I'm telling you that you are getting your money's worth. I've done 3D modeling for the past 10 years or so because of my career, so learning Fusion 360 was a much smaller learning curve for me. But learning from scratch, there are a lot of mistakes and bad habits that you can get into, which is gonna cause a lot of heartache down the road. By taking a course like Kevin's, you're gonna start off on the right foot, you're gonna be efficient, you're gonna be quick, and you're gonna be much happier in the long run. So if you're curious, just go check it out. There's a link in the video description below. Kevin's a great teacher and you won't be disappointed. Now there's a fundamental benefit to modeling in 3D for a woodworking project, and that is that you get to make all of your mistakes digitally. So I know I'm no different than any of you, but we've tried to wing projects before and mistakes happen, and your project just ends up being kind of so-so. If you start instead with a 3D model and you get to build the whole project through and understand what you need to think about and think ahead for, always seems to turn out a lot better. And then if you are gonna make build plans, at least in my case, it is an absolute requirement because I use the 3D model to create the illustrations that go into the build plans. So for the drawer example, it consists of two sides, a front, a back, and a bottom. But we're gonna start by drawing the sides. Now in this case, I'm making them out of 1x8 pine, and then I'm actually gonna cut a rabbet at each end for the joinery. Now my sketch actually comes in handy here in understanding how these things need to fit together to get my final drawer dimension. But again, because you're doing it digitally, you could fit it up one way and realize that you got your dimensions wrong, go back and tweak something, and then get it right. So once I've verified that my box is the right size, I can now add the bottom panel. So here you see a complete drawer. So this is where your 3D model comes in very handy, and specifically Fusion 360. I can actually orient my parts in a certain way that I want to show the customer, and then export that image with a transparent background, and then place them directly into my PowerPoint plans. So now that we've got our drawer modeled, we can now move into making the plans themselves. Because remember, we've made all our mistakes digitally, now we can move on to the real world. Quick break to talk about the sponsor of today's video, and that is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community for creative people with thousands of classes ranging from advertising to illustrations to photography, or there's videography classes on how not to shoot with shadows on your face. Oh, shoot. But just about anything you could think of. For example, you may be watching this video with the intention of selling some woodworking plans or maybe even woodworking products on a platform like Etsy. Well, Skillshare has a ton of classes specifically about Etsy. There's some on the basics of Etsy, how to set up a successful store, how to optimize shipping, how to run ad campaigns. You get the picture. Now what's cool about Skillshare is although there is a tiny cost associated with a membership, there are no ads. So you don't have to sit through one of these in one of those classes. And you can have multiple classes going on and you can pause and resume depending on your schedule. So it's really a great way to learn a new skill and improve your overall effectiveness in whatever it is that you do. If you're interested in checking it out, the first 1,000 people to sign up through the link in the video description down below will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So that should let you feel it out and understand kind of what you're getting into. And if you like it, stick with it. If you don't, so thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. So I've been a huge fan of Lego ever since I was a kid, and for me the gold standard for instructions is a Lego instruction manual. They take something that's pretty complex if you think about it and reduce it to a series of full color pictures and symbols. I love the fact that there's no words. They can convey a very complicated task without having to explicitly tell me how to do it. This has been something that I'm trying to achieve. I am nowhere near there right now, but it's where I want to get to. So to lay out my build plans, this is going to sound weird, but I use PowerPoint. Yeah. You heard that right. Now, I will probably move away from PowerPoint in the near future into something a little bit more professional, but for now, PowerPoint actually works really well. So I've actually created a template on which I make all of my build plans, but the template basically just consists of some branding, maybe a version number, and finally a page number. Everything else, of course, will be specific to the project. Now, the basic components of a successful woodworking plan, in my opinion, start with an initial disclaimer. Now, every one of my plans has one of these, and all it basically is saying is, this is what you're building, here's how big it is. If you want to make any changes, do that now. Because the last thing you want is somebody to get through this project and realize, oh, it's too big for my space. And I know that sounds dumb, but I think there's value in doing that. In the case of my ultimate cabinet build, there are several configurations, so I talk about that in the beginning. So if you have a limited space you need to work with and you need a smaller version of that, that's where you get that information so you get what you need. So the first real section is a master material list. So this includes everything that they will need to complete this project, including raw material like wood, parts, and even fasteners. What this does for you as a content creator is the opportunity to add affiliate links and make sure that they have exactly what they need and they don't have to go digging for it. Following the master material list is a master cut list. Now this is very important, especially for big projects, because you want to help them optimize their materials so they don't have a bunch of waste at the end of this. It also helps them wrap their mind around how much this is going to cost and potentially how long it's going to take. Now to build the cut sheets, I used to make them by hand, but I actually found a really great free resource called Cut List Optimizer. So after the master material list and the master cut list, you can start into the meat of the plans. Now for this example, we're building one drawer box, so that's the entirety of the plan. But if you're building, say, a cabinet with many drawers, you might first choose to build the cabinet and then move on to building the drawers. So the first section would be just the cabinet carcass itself, and it would have its own sub material list and sub cut sheet. I think there's a ton of value in creating bite-sized chunks that people can tackle, especially on big projects. So in the plans themselves, I always start with secondary operations on the stock material. And on top of just describing what needs to be done, I like to include a couple of options on how they might do it. Because again, I don't want to assume that everyone's an expert. So here I'll say, although I used a palm router, you could also use a router table or a dado blade in your table saw. And oh, by the way, for this particular case, if they're setting up that router with that rabbiting bit and getting it dialed in, if there are any other rabbets in this project that require those dimensions, I like to mention it here. If you were building this, you would like to know that because you don't want to have to go set this back up again. I like to include any warnings if possible. So in this case, there's actually a couple ways you can assemble the drawer box and end up with the wrong dimension drawer. So specifically call that out and make it very obvious. I like to err on the side of caution in this case. You want them to have a good time building this. You don't want them to get to the end and realize all their drawers are the wrong size. So once the main instructions are done, I always like to follow it up with an index with some resources. Now in my case, I usually do a build video to go along with the plan, so I'll link those videos directly. But this is also a good place to include things like tables or reference diagrams, or maybe even some examples of tools that you found very useful during the build. So from that PowerPoint file, we then create a PDF. The PDF just makes it universal so anybody can print it out. All right, so some last minute takeaways to making successful woodworking plans that you can sell. Visual is key, and in my opinion, I think color is better. Make sure you include upfront parts list and cut sheets, as well as sub parts list and sub cut sheets. It keeps going back to thinking about how you would build it and what you would like to have if you were in their position. Break the project up into logical steps. Try and use text sparingly. I have not mastered this yet. I wish I was better at this, but I want to get to the point where mine have very little, if any, text. And that leads directly into the next one, and that's keep it concise. Although I tend to err on the side of detail, there is a sweet spot, and nobody wants to download 1,000 pages on how to make a bookcase. So there you have it. You have a build plan that you can distribute out to customers, you can charge people for, you can give it away for free, whatever you choose to do. And this is where the topic of your platform comes into play. I have sold all of my build plans on Etsy. And a lot of people ask me, why would you do that? Most content creators and woodworkers sell them directly on their website, and there are absolutely pros to doing that. I would argue that there's more pros by using a platform like Etsy. Biggest one is that you have a much bigger audience. I can attribute a significant amount of my sales coming from sources other than my YouTube channel, and you just wouldn't have that traffic on your little website. Now, the downsides of using a platform like Etsy is, of course, they take a fee of every single sale that you make. It ends up being a very small percentage, but they do charge you to do it. And it's also an opportunity for them to get off of your website or off of your YouTube page, which is typically not a good thing. So you just kind of have to weigh that balance. What makes sense for you? So I hope that answers some of the questions that I've gotten over the years of what I use to make my plans, how I do my 3D modeling. Is there any pros for just an average maker to use that? And my answer is, of course, yes, there is. And that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope at a minimum you could take something and apply it to your world. Maybe you want to start selling woodworking plans, and this is a good way to get started. If I didn't answer a question in this video, please leave those in the comments below and I will answer them. If you do want to get started modeling in Fusion 360, I would highly encourage you to check out Kevin Kennedy's course. It is fantastic. There's a freaking chipmunk running around in the leaves back there. Don't you know I'm filming? And then lastly, if you want to check out some of the woodworking plans that I put together, head over to my Etsy store and you can see them there. I will see you guys on the next project, and as always, continue to pursue shop greatness.